This video is going to look at the features of science. So what makes psychology scientific and whether it is a science at all. So when we look at the specification, the key terms you need to know. You need to know what we mean by features of science, what is objectivity and empirical methods, what do we mean by the terms replicability and falsifiability. How do we go about theory construction and hypothesis testing? And what do we mean by the terms paradigm and paradigm shifts? Okay, these are the key words you need to know on this particular topic. And we're going to cover all of these in this video. So empirical evidence. This refers to data being collected through direct observations or experiments. So basically collecting evidence scientifically. And empirical evidence does not rely on things like argument or belief. Okay, we collect scientific evidence in order to put forward support or contradictions for theories. So instead of using arguments, in psychology we try and use experiments and observations, and we report these in detail so that other investigators can repeat them and try and verify our work. So when you see the word empirical evidence, just think it just means data being collected through scientific methods. We've also got objectivity. And objectivity means that researchers should remain totally value-free when studying. Okay, they should be completely unbiased. Their own opinions should not affect the results whatsoever. And researchers shouldn't be influenced by their own personal feelings or their own experiences. They should let the facts speak for themselves, even if it turns out to be completely different from what they hoped. Okay? And also, studies with the highest levels of control, like lab studies, tend to be the most objective because they've got standardized procedures, so your own personal feelings and opinions can't actually influence the results. For replicability, this just means whether you are able to repeat the method and find similar findings. So it's very similar to reliability. It's whether we can replicate the methodology and get the same results. And this should be possible across a range of different contexts and a range of circumstances using a range of different people. And it is that ability to achieve similar results again. And basically this determines the reliability of our findings. And it also helps to determine validity in a way, because if it can't be replicated across different contexts and circumstances and across different people, then it suggests we can't generalize the results, which therefore affects the external validity. And replicability is a really important part of the scientific process because the scientific method actually involves defining a problem and then formulating a hypothesis, which we can test it with empirical research. And research findings are a really important part of this scientific process, especially if we're trying to prove a theory or falsify a theory. And if we want to try and draw conclusions from research studies, then the procedures must be repeatable. We must be able to repeat it with different people, with the same people, and get the same results. And any unrepeatable results may suggest that there's flaws within your research and that the methods used weren't quite correct. And therefore, any findings will be of limited use when we're trying to construct a theory. And a theory is basically strengthened if we can repeat the results and get the same findings every single time. Okay? So if we're trying to falsify a theory and we're trying to prove a theory wrong, but the results keep showing again and again and again that the theory is correct, the theory basically becomes stronger. Falsifiability is a word we've used once or twice already. And falsifiability basically means that a theory cannot be considered scientific unless it admits the possibility of being proved untrue. So every theory in psychology, there is a potential for it to be proved incorrect. And that's what falsifiability is about. Even if a theory has been proved successful again and again and again and again and again, repeatedly tested over and over again, it doesn't mean that that theory is true. It just means it hasn't been proven false yet. So falsifiability is testing theories again and again to try and prove that the theory is incorrect. And if a theory survives these attempts to prove it false again and again, then the theory simply becomes stronger. Okay, so every single theory in psychology and in science should be tested again and again to try and prove it false. And this is why in psychology I never let you use words like this proves. Okay, and we use words like this suggests or this shows that instead of this proves, because nothing proves anything in psychology. We can only suggest it, because the more and more we test it, there is a chance that the findings could be falsified. Here's a little example of a cartoon. You can pause the screen if you want, have a little read of it to give you an idea about falsifiability, okay, and how theories should be falsified when we find something different. So a paradigm. Well, a paradigm is a set of assumptions, okay, and agreed methodologies within science. So an agreed set of assumptions within science. If you look at the natural sciences like biology and physics, these have set principles in place. So biology, one of the main principles they have is the theory of evolution. Okay, Darwin's theory that we've evolved. And that would be a paradigm within biology. And psychology is usually called a pre-science because there's too many internal arguments and different opinions and conflicting approaches and theories. So natural sciences, they have this set paradigm within them. Psychology is usually referred to as a pre-science because of all this conflict within it. A paradigm shift is a result of scientific revolution. When something happens and there's a complete change in science and the way we think about something. And there's a change mainly in the dominant unifying theory within a certain science. So for example in physics, when it changed from Newton's paradigm towards Einstein's theory of relativity, that was a giant shift in physics. Okay, it changed from Newtonian to Einstein's theory of relativity. That was a big paradigm shift within physics. So we're going to have a quick look now about how theories are actually constructed. And when we think about a theory, it's a set of general rules or principles that have the ability to explain particular events or behaviours. And any theory should be able to be tested. Okay, we should be able to put any theory through scientific testing. And when we think about theory construction, we usually have an idea, so usually based on previous research that's been done in that area. And then we create a hypothesis about it. Then we gather loads of evidence, we use empirical methods and scientific research, conduct experiments and observations, and then we draw conclusions from study. Okay, so we draw on our conclusion from study, and that is what usually results in a theory. And there's two main methods of constructing a theory, the induction method and the deduction method. So induction method means that scientists will make an observation and then they'll create their theory around this observation. And then they'll go away and they'll try and conduct research to prove or disprove it. Okay, so they've got their observation, they then conduct some research to prove or disprove it. The deduction method, however, is where the scientists will create a theory and then go away and search for evidence to prove or disprove it. So the theory comes right at the start. Create their theory and then look for research to prove or disprove it. And this fits in with that idea of theory should be falsified. That instead of looking to prove a theory, you go away and try and disprove it. Okay, remember, if you can't disprove it, that means that your theory becomes even stronger. So when we look at the two theories, if you look here, with the theory of deduction, you propose a theory at the start, and then you go on to test it and conduct studies and then draw your conclusions from it. With the induction method, however, you've got your observations, you do your hypothesis, you conduct your study, you draw your conclusions, and finally you propose your study. So it's just where we put the theory or the theory construction. In the induction method, it's right at the end. In the deduction method, it's early on. Okay. So hypothesis testing basically refers to the idea that you should be able to make clear and precise predictions based on a theory. That's what a hypothesis is. Got your theory, can you make predictions based on it? And a theory should be able to put forward a number of different hypotheses. You should have a null hypothesis, saying there's no relationship. You should be able to have experimental or alternate hypothesis, which will be giving what you think will occur. And we should be able to test theories. Okay, once we've got our hypothesis, then we can do experiments to test whether we can refute or support the actual hypothesis we've been making. And there's a lot of keywords you've got to know in this features of science part. And really, you can bring in any other key terms into an answer as well. Anything that you know is linked to features you've noticed in other sciences like physics, biology, chemistry. So it could be words like quantitative data and statistical analysis. They're features of science that we use in psychology. Once we've got all our data, we put it through statistical tests, which we're going to learn about in a bit. And that is a feature that you'd see in any other science. You've got things like precise measurements, which you see in chemistry, physics, biology, which we also use in psychology. The idea of using precise measurements gives us more valid results. So there are other words, not just the ones in this video, that you could bring into an answer.